In example 3, we are going to consider the equation 2 times the quantity x plus 4 squared plus 2 times the quantity y minus 1 squared is equal to 50. Okay, there are 3 different things we're going to do with this equation. In part A, we're going to graph the equation by hand. In part B, we're going to find the intercepts of the graph of this circle algebraically. And then in part C, we are going to write the general form of the equation of the circle. Okay, so there is a lot going on with this particular circle. Okay, so let's start with part A, where we graph this equation by hand. Okay, now I'm going to give you a warning here. Okay, it's actually much easier to graph a circle by hand than to do it on the calculator. Okay, we'll see why in a minute. Okay, but let's first talk about how you do this by hand. Okay, so here's our equation. 2 times x plus 4 squared plus 2 times y minus 1 squared is equal to 50. Okay, first thing we need to talk about how you would recognize this as the equation of a circle. Okay, again, when you get the final exam, you're going to have lines and circles and parabolas and exponentials and logarithmics. You've got to know what kind of equation you're dealing with here. Okay, this looks similar to the standard form of the equation of a circle. Okay, so if you flip back to page 3 and you look at the yellow box, remember this is what the standard form of the equation of a circle looks like. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and write that down. Okay, so the standard form of the equation of a circle is x minus h all squared plus y minus k all squared is equal to r squared. Okay, so it's very, very similar to what we have. Okay, one of the issues with this particular equation is the 2 in front of both the x plus 4 quantity and the y minus 1 quantity. Okay, when you look at standard form, there is no number outside of the parentheses. Okay, so we're gonna have to, the first thing we're gonna have to do is get this particular equation in standard form, but because of the 2, it's not in standard form, if that makes sense. Okay, so let me go ahead and write it down again. Okay, this is what we're dealing with. And oops, forgot the 2. All right, so we've got to get rid of both of these 2's. Okay, so if you look at the x plus 4, that quantity squared, it is multiplied by 2. And the y minus 1 quantity squared is also multiplied by 2. Again, realize that both 2's are outside of the parentheses. The quantity inside the parentheses is being squared. The 2 is not part of that. It is on the outside. Whatever's in parentheses is being squared, not the 2. Okay, so what we're going to do, since each of these quantities, the x plus 4 quantity squared and y minus 1 quantity squared, each one of those guys is multiplied by 2, we're going to undo that by dividing by 2. Okay, if you do it to one of the parts, you have to do it to all of the parts. Okay, so each of the 3 pieces is going to get divided by 2. Okay, so on this side, the 2 divided by 2 is going to cancel. It's going to leave you with x plus 4 quantity squared. You've got your plus sign in the middle, and then with this middle term, you've got 2 divided by 2. Those cancel, and you're going to be left with y minus 1 quantity squared is equal to 50 divided by 2, which is 25. Okay, so now this looks like the standard form of the equation of a circle. Okay, so we're going to graph this circle by hand. We needed to put the equation in standard form first. Why? Because only when the equation is in standard form can you identify the center in the radius. Okay, if you tried to jump the gun and you immediately started working with the equation as it had been given, you would have ended up with the wrong radius. Okay, so you have to make sure that your equation's in standard form before you can identify the center and the radius. Okay, let's start with the radius. Okay, that's always easier. Okay, the radius r, remember the number on the right. Okay, this is r squared. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say, r squared here is 25. Okay, so that means if you take the square root of both sides, remember you don't want to put a plus or minus here because radius has to be positive. You're going to get that r is 5. Okay, so this circle has radius 5. Okay, now we're going to work on the center. Okay, the center is an ordered pair, so we've got to figure out the x coordinate as well as the y coordinate. Okay, so remember what you need to do. Okay, the little trick I told you. All right, if we're going to figure out the x coordinate, we're going to go to the parentheses that has the x. Okay, we're going to take the quantity x plus 4 and we're going to set it equal to 0 and solve. Okay, this is going to tell us that the x coordinate of the center of the circle is -4. Okay, so that's it. That's all you have to do. Okay, and then we can do the same kind of thing to figure out the y coordinate of the center. Okay, so we're going to go to the part of the equation that contains the y. Okay, the quantity in parentheses with the y, we're going to set it equal to 0. So y minus 1 is equal to 0. Okay, to get y by itself, we're going to add 1 to both sides. This is going to tell us that y is equal to 1. So the y coordinate of the center is 1, positive 1. Okay. All right, so now we know that this circle is centered at -4, +1, and it has a radius of 5. So we're going to be able to graph it by hand. Okay, so I'm going to go to my grid, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plot the center. We have to know where to center this circle. It is at the point -4, 1. That's right here. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to draw in the radius. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to make a cross. Okay, from the center we're going to go 5 units in all directions. We're going to go up, down, left, and right. So we're making a cross, and then your circle will be drawn through those 4 points. Okay, so from the center I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to this point. Okay, that's -4, 6. And then if I return to the center, I'm going to go down 5 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's -4, -4. And then back at the center, I need to go to the left 5 units. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's -9, 1. And then lastly, I return to the center. I need to go to the right 5 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 1, 1. Okay, and we're going to draw the circle through these points. Okay, it's kind of hard actually to draw a circle. Whoops. As you can see, they never come out quite right. Okay, that's good enough. Okay, so you basically plot your center. Okay, from the center you want to go up the number of units equal to the radius. Okay, and then down, left, and right. Okay, that gives you 4 points to draw your circle through. Okay, so that's how you do this by hand. Okay, so let me talk quickly about why it is actually difficult to graph this circle on the calculator. Okay, you see the original equation. I've highlighted that in blue, and then we put it in standard form, and that is this equation right here. Okay, and both of them, both the original equation and the one that we put into standard form, neither one of those guys is solved for y. So when you go to a calculator and you hit y equals to graph something, and I've got a lot of stuff in here, so just ignore that, you've got to have your equation solved for y. Okay, and that's not what we have here in either form of the equation. So you would actually have to go through the work of solving the equation for y before you could put it in. And one of the problems is because it involves a y squared, you would have to put in one equation for the positive version, for the positive square root, and then one equation for the negative square root. So it gets to be really, really complicated. Okay, but you can see how straightforward it was to graph a circle by hand. So I recommend doing it this way. All right, so let's move on to part B and try to find the intercepts, both x and y, of the graph of this circle.